let me just make sure. Ooh, I don't want to do that necessarily. All right, welcome everybody. If you can hear the sound of my voice, if somebody would raise their hand so that I know where, yes, I can see the usual people are raising their hands. Can everybody see us, the webcams? Raise your hand if you can see it. Yes, they say they can see us. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started in a minute. Why don't we get started right now? I'm very happy to introduce Mylana, who's with Property ID. I've had her speak several times elsewhere in the past. She does a great presentation. She's going to answer all of your questions about natural hazard disclosure. I know some of you want to know whether or not dam inundation is somebody cursing, right? She'll probably explain that. You can't see their faces, but I want you to know that there is a sea of eager and curious faces out there just thirsting for knowledge. I'm going to, if you want, did you want to use your computer to present something?
Me?
Yeah. I'm making you a
well, I will. I don't really share my screen because I like to record this computer screen. No, I don't share my screen because you know, I'm Greek and I have ADD.
Oops, yeah.
I'm
well,
muted.
I'll just take it back. You don't have to share your screen, right? So just don't click the share screen button. If you guys have any questions along the way, go ahead and text them in the box, and I'll see that you get your questions answered. And so there's a handout, which I assume that everybody can download. If you have issues with it, put in the text and I'll find a way of getting it to you. All right. So with that, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much for having me. It's good to see you all. My name is Mylana. I've been Property ID's lawyer for 22 years. I am the past president of the real estate section of the Bar Association on the East Bay. And before that, I did divorces in Los Angeles. And I am currently part of Kids in Cancer Camp Agape, which is a camp for terminally ill children and their families. And it's something I'm very proud of. And I will, I did actually send you a sample property ID report, which I will reference. And there's items in here that are going to be very important to you, for your understanding about natural hazard disclosure. I would also like to email to Michael other information that I will be sharing with you so that you can have it in your hands and it'll help you understand. So the first thing in this report that I sent to you is the very first page is the natural hazard disclosure statement and disclosure report receipt. And this is a statutory form, much like the TDS. The law which governs this is California Civil Code Section 1103. This is the law that requires that a seller disclose natural hazards to the buyer. So the TDS will be disclosing information that seller has knowledge of. For example, is there a fence around the swimming pool? You know, is there an oven that comes with this house? You know, was there any flooding? These are the TDS questions. But in the same civil code is the natural hazard disclosure. And the natural hazard disclosure often, mostly, I don't know many sellers who have knowledge of whether or not their property is in a natural hazard zone. And the law requires that sellers make these disclosures, but when seller is represented by an agent, here is what the law reads, quote, a seller's agent for a seller of real property. So the law is identifying that when the seller has an agent, it's the seller's agent who bears the responsibility. Note here that it does not say escrow officer. It does not say home warranty rep. It doesn't say transaction coordinator. The law is very clear. The responsible entity is the seller's agent. That's the responsible party. Seller, when seller is for sale by owner. It also states in the law, seller's agent of a seller of real property shall disclose to any prospective buyer these natural hazards. So in the law itself, it's telling you, these disclosures, natural hazards, must be delivered to any prospective buyer. That does not mean the one buyer you are in contract with, but anybody who might want to buy this property. So ideally, and I know that in Northern California, it is typically done this way, you take the listing, you have the seller complete the TDS, you get the natural hazard disclosure report right away, and then you upload these statutory disclosures to the MLS with a note, hey, buyers, here are the disclosures, return them signed with your offer. And the reason why the law is designed this way is because it comes with a 5-day right to terminate the contract. So the TDS and the natural hazard disclosure come with a 5-day right to terminate the contract. Also in the law, it reads this: sellers and their agents acknowledge that they have exercised good faith in the selection of a third-party report provider. Legally, good faith is the highest standard of honesty. That means that if you think one report, because it's telling you to choose wisely, is better than other reports, then you are obligated to, and in good faith, you must recommend that which you would want to receive if you were the purchaser of this property. So back to the natural hazard disclosure statement. One of the things that's brand new right now, it's the talk of the town, is Assembly Bill 38. And that is the new fire retrofit in the state of California. And so just to share with you an example, when the property is in a very high fire hazard severity zone and a high, so very high and high, the seller is legally required to disclose features on the property that make the home vulnerable to wildfire and flying embers. So in the sample that I had sent to you, this sample property ID report, it's a true property that we did a report on, but we just changed the name of the street to protect the owner of the property. So you're not all, hey, did you know? So this property, if you look at it, very high fire hazard severity zone, the answer is no, but it is in high. So if it says yes, then the seller would be legally required to list features on the property that make the home vulnerable to wildfire and flying embers. If you turn to, it looks like, I think it's page 12 of your sample property ID report. Here is a summary of Assembly Bill 38, and this is what the page looks like. And on this page, I summarized what are the features that make the home vulnerable to wildfire and flying embers. And by the way, Assembly Bill 38 is attached to the TDS. So this comes with a 5-day right to terminate the contract also along with the TDS. So effective January of this year, seller is required to list features on the property that make the home vulnerable to wildfire and flying embers if the property is in very high or high. So I just showed you where to find it in the property ID report. But coming July, and this is actually, it's right on the sample I sent to you on page 12. Coming July, Seller is legally required to provide buyer with documentation stating that the property complies with defensible space law. So I have added to your reports the defensible space information. Here it is. Forgive me. I am just not good at sharing my screen. I'm just not that technologically savvy, I guess. So I'm old school. I like the paper. I show it to you. Forgive me, please. Okay, I'm sorry. Don't hate me. So here we go. This is the defensible space information, which is already in your property ID reports. And I would like to email these to you. These 3 documents, the list of low-cost retrofits, the defensible space, and the summary of the law. The reason why I want to email this to you is because you will have it in your possession, in your email, in the event you go to take a listing. And sellers just got piles of crap all over the property. That is not in compliance with this. So this is a really nice way for you to give this to the seller and say, seller, this is the law. Okay, so I'm just the messenger. I'm not telling you to clean up the crap. The law is telling you to do that, and you're going to have to do that. And the reason is because coming July, seller will be, of course, required to state that the property complies with defensible space laws, but also coming July, seller will be required to give buyer a list of low-cost retrofits, which, by the way, it's already in your property ID reports, and I'm going to send this to you. Also coming July, seller will be, and all of this is in that summary, seller will be legally required to disclose to the buyer that the property is in compliance with state and local vegetation management ordinances within 6 months before the sale. So if you've got a friend who's told you, oh yeah, I think I'm going to get my house ready to sell it in June, they will have already had to be in compliance with this 6 months before the sale. But here is a nice little option that the law has provided. So in the event the seller has not been able to bring this property into compliance, the law allows the seller and the buyer to enter into an agreement whereby the buyer agrees to bring the property into compliance within 1 year from the close of escrow. So the nice little option, and it's all right here, which I'm going to send it to you, and it's in the report that I already sent to you, is that in the event you're representing a seller and for whatever reason, seller just can't do it. Seller's just not going to do it. Seller can't bring the property into compliance. Seller can put into, like, if so seller receives an offer either as an addendum or as a counter, seller has not brought the property into compliance, buyer agrees to bring the property into compliance within 1 year from the close of escrow. Ta-da! But you still gotta know. All right. So I want to share with you something, just because it's crazy and it's fun and it's awful all at the same time. So this lady moved into my neighborhood. Okay, I don't know if you're familiar. I hate social media. I really don't like it because it scares me. I mean, I don't need to know that you took the trash out today. I just, I thought you would anyway, right? So social media to me is just, it's a frightening place. But there is one social media place that I do like to check once in a while, just because there's all kinds of fun garage sales and all kinds of interesting things going on. And that's called Nextdoor. It's an awful place. It's like Facebook, but these terrible people are not your friends. Well, they're not my friends anyway. So this lady moved into my neighborhood, okay? And she posted on Nextdoor, hey, I'm new to the neighborhood. I just closed escrow 4 months ago, and everything was all good and fine before I bought my house. But now, oh, there's a crack developing in my dining room and the floors in my foyer are sloping. So I'm putting this out there for y'all because the neighborhood, so much better than I do. Is this common in our neighborhood? Is this because of all the rain we're having right now after all these years of drought? Or is this just me? So I was reading this and I said, wow, that's just you, boo. But another lady in the neighborhood, and let me just say, this lady is the one, she knows where all the missing cats went. She knows why the dogs are barking at 2 in the morning. She knows the names of the teenagers that are speeding in the street. Okay, I don't know where she gets her information, but it's scary. So I want to share with you what she wrote in reply to that. So here's what she wrote, quote, I would go after the seller, but go hard on the realtor. The realtor is the expert and should have made sure this was disclosed. For those of you that have been in real estate for a minute, you remember a time when the only person that maybe you had to worry about perhaps was the person right across the street from the buyer or right next door coming with cookies and saying, hey, welcome to the neighborhood. Hey, did they get rid of the rat problem that was in that house? Oh, yeah. Oh, so the pest guy, he would come and he would park his van and block my driveway. And so, I was going to complain. And then I saw these rats he's pulling out of your house. So that was really bad. Did they tell you about, I think they were supposed to tell you, you know. So thanks to this awful place called Next Door, you have people within an 8-mile radius giving your clients free legal advice, right? So don't worry, if these things happen, you just make sure that it's all disclosed, because that's the most important thing. All right, so let me share with you more about this. So on the natural hazard disclosure statement, you will see only 6 items, okay? You see a special flood hazard area, which if the property is in a special flood hazard area and the buyer has a mortgage, the federal government will impose on the buyer to impose, the federal government imposes on the lender to impose on the buyer to maintain flood insurance. If the buyer is purchasing the property cash, no one is mandating flood insurance. But if it is not a cash deal and the buyer has a loan, the lender will require flood insurance. The second item on the natural hazard disclosure statement is an area of potential flooding because of dam failure. So there has been a lot of concern about this determination that I've seen. I've seen a lot of purchasers that have experienced dam failure in their home countries, that have been very concerned when they see a property in a dam inundation zone on a property ID report. The reality is, in California, dams don't typically fail. Yes, there was an issue in Oroville a couple of years back. I don't know if you remember the Oroville Dam. We had some serious rains, and the Oroville Dam was threatening to breach, but it didn't. Dams don't typically break in California. But the Office of Emergency Services that maps out the dam inundation zone, what they do is they look at a worst case scenario. They say, okay, if we had El Nino rain conditions and all the flood basins and all the flood channels were already to maximum capacity, and on that day the dam broke, would the water from the dam flood this property? And the answer is yes or no. So in the sample that I have sent to you, the answer is no. Okay, and then the next item we discussed already is fire. So this property is not in very high, but it is in high. The fourth item is the wildland fire. Again, this is another fire determination in which the area has a high propensity for fire, but also This property might not be in an incorporated city. It's outside the city. It's in the unincorporated county area. So there is no city fire department that would service this property. And so therefore it might be difficult to get fire insurance. The owner might have to do California Fair Plan. And right now, with all of this going on right now, there's just a lot of noise about insurance companies dropping people because insurance companies are maxed out in a neighborhood. And I know this because my cousin, who lives in San Jose, she had texted me a photo of a letter that she got from her insurance company that said, you know, we're dropping you. Sorry, you know, ciao, goodbye, au revoir, because they are maxed out and they've just insured way too many people in her area. And so in the event that there is a fire, this insurance company is not going to make it because, you know, they've just insured too many people. So they told her, we're dropping you. And that is something that people are seeing. Either that or they're seeing, you know, that all of a sudden their insurance company is costing almost as much as their mortgage, their fire insurance, right? Welcome to California. What are you going to do? All right. So the next item is earthquake fault zone. This particular property is not in an earthquake fault zone. An earthquake fault zone is a very specific situation. So let me share with you. So this is a property located on Woodwind Place in Walnut Creek. This property, by the way, is valued at $2,052,000. This property is in an earthquake fault zone because of its proximity to the Concord Fault. So if you are in an earthquake fault zone, you cannot build hospitals or schools in these zones. If your home is in an earthquake fault zone and it is destroyed by fire, by flood, by whatever, the city can tell you, you know what, we're not going to let you build again. So it's really important to know if your property is in an earthquake fault zone. By contrast, here is a property on Velvet Leaf Circle in San Ramon. So this property is close to the Sherburne Hills Thrust Fault, but the Sherburne Hills Thrust Fault is not a fault being studied under the Alquist-Priolo Earthquake Fault Zone Act of 1972. So this is my old house, and I sold this house, and I share this with you because of the fact that it's located close to two faults, the Franklin Fault and the Southampton Fault. Neither of those faults falls under the Alquist-Priolo Earthquake Fault Zone Act. However, the Franklin Fault goes through a couple of towns and then it changes names and it becomes the Calaveras Fault, which is being studied by the state of California under the Alquist-Priolo Earthquake Fault Zone Act of 1972. I am sharing this with you because of the fact that it's so important for a buyer to understand the natural hazard disclosure because of the fact that there's serious implications with regard to the property. There are implications with regard to the insurability of the property. And also, here is another item. On the natural hazard disclosure statement, a seismic hazard zone. So if a property is in, and a seismic hazard is landslide and liquefaction. Tsunami is also a seismic hazard, but for some reason, the California legislature did not add tsunami as a seismic hazard here. But in my opinion, they should have, because a tsunami, I mean, we all know, right? There's an earthquake and all of a sudden there's a tsunami. So they didn't add it here. What is a seismic hazard? A seismic hazard is the byproduct of an earthquake. So you've got the earthquake, it shakes, and then landslides happen, liquefaction happens, tsunamis happen. And so these are items, or these are natural hazards that happen after the earthquake, right? So for those of you familiar with the Loma Prieta earthquake that happened in 1989, oh, you weren't born yet, I know, you're all too young for that. Okay. So in 1989, there was an earthquake in the Santa Cruz Mountains in Loma Prieta, okay? 70 miles away from the epicenter in San Francisco, in the Marina District, they suffered liquefaction. Liquefaction is the sudden loss of strength of soil because of severe ground shaking because of an earthquake. Also very important is that when an earthquake happens, seismic waves will travel out away from the epicenter, and then they'll even come back and collide. And so when that happens, there's some serious liquefaction that occurs. So in the Marina District of San Francisco, they suffered liquefaction. Landslides are another byproduct of an earthquake. So they're earthquake-induced landslides. So the shaking causes the land to slide. There are so many disclosures in this report, and the fact is that agents believe that all reports are the same, and so they don't know that it's very dangerous to use a substandard natural hazard disclosure report. And the reason is because, let's say buyer becomes unhappy. Okay, buyer is angry. My partner made me offer $30,000 above the asking price, and I'm not happy now. Boo. Okay, so I would like to get some money back because now all of a sudden this burst is happening, this inflation thing is happening, and I'm not happy. I paid too much. So the first thing that the buyer will look at is there something wrong or missing on the TDS, right? If something is wrong or missing on the TDS, how much money can the buyer sue for? How much money can the buyer demand? Cost to repair, cost to replace. That's it. That's it. You didn't tell me that this roof was leaking, seller. Well, here I am now. I got a leaky roof. I got a roofer in here telling me that this roof has leaked before, and yet I looked through every page in the TDS, and nowhere does it say anywhere that this roof has leaked. So I'm not happy, seller. You and the listing agent and even my agent, y'all better scrape together $30,000 and buy me a new roof, because if you had told me about this, I could have asked for a credit during the escrow. I could have asked seller to fix the problem, right? Well, now seller, listing agent, and my agent, you guys are going to buy me a new roof. So that's how it works. It's, it's like a shakedown, really. Cost to repair, cost to replace if something is wrong or missing on the TDS. All right, what about if something is wrong or missing on the natural hazard disclosure report? How much money can the buyer sue for? How much money can the buyer demand? The entire value of the property, all of it. Why? How come? Well, because you can't fix a fault like you can fix a roof. You can't fix a liquefaction zone. You can't fix protected species. You can't fix the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. You can't fix these things. And in California, we have Easton versus Strasburger, California Civil Code section 1102.8. California Civil Code Section 1103.8, buyer is legally entitled to receive all facts that materially affect the value or desirability of the property. What's value? Excuse me, value. You're the experts of value. Value is that which most people are willing to pay for something. That's value. Okay. What's desirability? That's a little bit more difficult to define. I'll give you an example. Today for lunch, I will desire a fish taco. I haven't had lunch yet, so fish taco sounds splendid. Anybody, what do you want for lunch today? You probably had lunch. Or you're eating it right now. Right? Okay, I don't know.
Salmon.
Well, what?
Salmon. I want salmon.
Oh, salmon. Salmon sounds fantastic. Thank you, Michael. Michael will have salmon for lunch. Wow, you're fancy, Michael. Okay, so that's an example of desirability. Everybody's got their own desire. It's different from person to person. It changes from minute to minute. Maybe I'll have some salmon. See, he just changed my mind. That's an example of desirability. Let me share with you a couple of other examples of desirability. Here's Velvet Leaf Circle in San Ramon. Oh, boo. If I had known this property is so close to the Sherburne Hills thrust fault, it's in a landslide zone on 3 different maps. It has very high susceptibility for shrink swell potential because it has expansive soils. By the way, property ID is the only natural hazard disclosure report that discloses expansive soils. Expansive soils, just so you know, it's a local thing. It's not on the natural hazard disclosure statement. So it's a local thing. What it means is that when it rains a lot, the soils under my house will swell up like a sponge. And when it's hot and dry in the summer, the soil under my house shrinks up like a sponge. So what do you think's happening to my house with all that swelling and shrinking going on every season? My floors are buckling. My walls are separating from my ceiling. I've got cracks all over the place. I can't lock my door in the winter. I can't shut my windows in the summer, right? Okay, so that's what expansive soils do. Serious damage to a home. It's in a very high fire hazard zone, and it's in the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. None of these are on the Natural Hazard Disclosure Statement. And the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, by the way, is a law that the state of California passed that says that all the water underneath our houses is owned by the state of California. So if you bought a house or a property because it has a well on it, boo. Because the water in the well is owned by the state. And if you pull too much, I'm just telling you this because I have a friend who got a notice. She's got a well and she built this, rental in the backyard, and she got a notice and she hooked it up so the water from the well would supply water to the rental. She got a notice from the state that she can only use 2 gallons of water per day from her well, and if she exceeds that limit, she will be assessed a penalty, and if she fails to pay the penalty, the state can take her property. So it's very important to know if you're in the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. Here's another one. This is Skyline Boulevard in Los Gatos. This property is in a high fire zone on 5 different maps. It's in the California Public Utilities Commission high fire zone. It has the globally endangered marbled murrelet protected by the U.S. Forest Service, and it's got the endangered San Francisco garter snake. you know, if there's a snake on my property, I'm not asking for credentials. I'm going to put my money on me because I'm terrified of snakes and rats. You know, there's an endangered kangaroo rat. I don't know what kind of rat it is. If it's on my property and if I have the opportunity, I don't know. I don't know what I might do in that situation, but you know, it depends on what that rat's threatening me with. But I think I might fly into a panic. Who knows? Anyway, this property also is within 500 feet of 2 oil and gas wells, the Ajax Oil and Development Oil and Gas well, as well as the Bought for Oil Company Oil and Gas well. Maybe I would not have desired to spend $3,200,000 on this property. But you know what, guys? I'll be completely honest with you. Agents that don't know, they don't care. They don't care. They don't care about anything I just shared with you because they don't know the differences in natural hazard disclosure reports. They don't know. And not only that, but the buyers that are buying the houses, they don't know. They don't care. They sign it. They go on with their lives, right? Nobody cares about anything I just shared with you until the poop hits the fan. And, you know, it's really interesting because I got a call this morning from a lawyer here on the East Bay. And apparently there's this neighborhood where that's just suffered a landslide and the neighbors are all suing each other. And only one of these neighbors had a property ID report that disclosed that this property's in a landslide zone, and everybody's all suing each other. They should have known, but they didn't have a property ID report. And if they had one, then they probably wouldn't be suing each other. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that nobody cares about these items in here until the poop hits the fan. And then every word that was not disclosed to these buyers immediately becomes the only thing they care about, the only thing that has ever mattered in their lives, right? And I mean, I know that real estate agents do not show up at marketing meetings and don't skip around the grocery store saying, hey, guess what? I'm getting sued. Yes, I am. Oh, list your house with me. No, you'll never hear those words coming out of the mouths of any realtors ever. Because when an agent is getting sued, when a brokerage is getting sued, everybody goes on lockdown. Don't talk about it. Shh. You guys don't hear about it. You don't hear that agents are getting sued. And yet, I have a directory of lawsuits where the natural hazard disclosure report was wrong or missing information, and the agents and the brokers got sued. I mean, look at this, how many lawsuits. And I just heard of one this morning. I got to look it up and add it to my list of all the lawsuits. Agents and brokers got sued because of wrong or missing information on natural hazard disclosure reports. Let me share. I'm not scaring you. I'm informing you so that you know. Don't get scared, okay? Don't get scared. Here is the first lawsuit. It's Cook and Giancoli versus Pitch, Preview Real Estate, Rodeo Realty, and America West Real Estate Services. So these people bought a house in Porter Ranch, and they received a natural hazard disclosure report that was, quote, incompetent and incomplete because it did not disclose to them that they were close to the Aliso Canyon gas well. Well, I don't know if you heard about the Aliso Canyon gas well. I mean, it doesn't sound very exciting unless you live there, but this gas well started to leak toxic gas into this neighborhood. It was colorless and odorless, so nobody knew that it was leaking. So it leaked about 1 million barrels of toxic gas every day for 4 months. And the reason why people figured out it leaked is because everybody got sick. All the adults, all the children, all their animals, their cats, their dogs, everybody was getting sick. It was declared the worst environmental disaster. The worst environmental disaster in U.S. history. You know that there's tens of thousands of these oil and gas wells all over the state of California? I just shared 2 with you. This on Skyline Boulevard in Los Gatos. I wonder if the people that paid $3,200,000 received a property ID report, because if they did, then it was disclosed to them that they're close to 2 oil and gas wells, the Ajax Oil and Development Oil and Gas well, as well as the Bofter Oil Company oil and gas well. If they received a property ID report, this was disclosed to them. In the event that either one of these gas wells starts to leak, they knew. If they didn't read it, that's on them. It was disclosed to them. Here's another example. Let me see. I've got, oh my gosh, I've got so many. So I've got this one in Orinda. This property is within 500 feet of the Orinda Petro Company oil and gas well. I hope the people that paid $1.9 million for this house received a property ID report, because property ID is the only company that discloses oil and gas wells. And then here's one in Danville, the Phillips Petroleum Company oil and gas well. Here's one in Lafayette, the Dunsire Drive in Lafayette. This property is within 500 feet of the Lafayette Oil Company oil and gas well. So it's really important to know. Even if the buyer didn't read the report, which in many cases happens, it's very important that they receive the disclosure. Most people will look at this and go, I don't know, what does it mean? I don't care. Would you be afraid? I don't know. I get that question every day. Would you be scared? Would you be scared? And then I share with them my house. It's close to 2 faults. It's in a landslide zone. I've got the threatened California tiger salamander on my property. And I got a whole bunch of other things going on. Here's the next lawsuit. You ready? Here it is. Thomas Massari versus Kirk Schwazinski. Do you see that? There we go. So Thomas Massari bought a house and he received a natural hazard disclosure report that was wrong. He sued the listing agent, Kirk Schwazinski of Century 21, Doug Anderson. Kirk Schwazinski picked up the phone and called the disclosure company and said, guys, there's a mistake. Your report was wrong, but the buyer is suing me. That's not okay. You guys prepared the report. You guys need to handle this. Why is he suing me? I had nothing to do with your report. And you know what? And I know this because Kirk Schwazinski's lawyer called me. They said, oh, boo, Kirk, that's too bad. That's on you, boo. You should have read our terms and conditions. We don't cover you for that. So Kirk Schwazinski was forced to file a cross complaint against that natural hazard disclosure company because they refused to step up and help him out, right? Their report was wrong. He got sued and they're like, yeah, boo, that's you. We're not helping you. So do you think that when this natural hazard disclosure company was served with their summons, they said, okay, fine, all right, we'll pay? No. Here is their answer that they shot right back at Kirk Schwazinski. And they said, Kirk, you are barred from recovery and you are not covered under any insurance policy. Well, I had a webinar just like this one for Kirk's Century 21 Doug Anderson last week. And I know that none of those agents will ever use that other natural hazard disclosure report again. Never. They're like, we'll never use that report. If that rep shows up in our parking lot, we'll kick her butt, right? I said, don't do that. But this natural hazard disclosure company, they don't care. They don't care. And the reason they don't care that they've lost Century 21 Doug Anderson and they've lost Kirk Swazinski as clients, they don't care because they are owned by a very large title company. So if you are not crystal clear on the natural hazard disclosure report that you want in your transaction, be careful because the escrow officer just might order this one. I was at an escrow conference in Fresno, and I was seated next to a very nice escrow officer. She was lovely. And she said, "Oh, wow, you're the attorney for property ID. That's a good report." I said, "Thank you, I know." And she said, "But we can't use it." And I said, "What? Why?" She said, "Oh, we are not allowed. It is company policy that whenever we get an opportunity to order a natural hazard disclosure report, we have to order our own. We cannot order yours. So be careful. If you are not crystal clear on your escrow instructions, you just might get this one." Here is another lawsuit. Delaware versus Sohey and Frank Howard Allen. All of this is public record, by the way. I mean, I'm not sharing a secret with you. This is, you can pull all this up by yourself. It's just that the agents and the brokers don't tell you about it. But agents and brokers get sued because of natural hazard disclosure reports. So here we go. Delaware versus Sohey and Frank Howard Allen Real Estate. Frank Howard Allen Real Estate does not exist anymore. And, I don't know why. I'm not implying it's because of this lawsuit, but, this lawsuit happened and then I don't know, they sold, or I don't know what happened, but they're not in business anymore. So this lady bought a house at 32 Marina Boulevard in San Rafael, which is in the North San Francisco Bay Area. And she received a property ID report. And property ID disclosed this property is in high liquefaction and bay mud. I bet she didn't read it. She didn't care. She went on with her life. Right? Nobody reads the natural hazard disclosure report. Who cares about it, right? It's the cheapest report in your transaction. 2 years later, she decided she wanted to sell her house. So her agent did not order a property ID. Her agent ordered a different natural hazard disclosure report from a different company. And in this disclosure report, it said nothing, zero, nothing about the fact that this property is in high liquefaction and bay mud. Nothing. So this lady, Elaine Delwin, buys the house. And 9 months after the close of escrow, she files this lawsuit. And her lawyer argued this. Hey, seller, very interesting seller. When you bought the house, you received a very complete property ID natural hazard disclosure. But when you sold the house, you provided an incomplete, incompetent natural hazard disclosure. You know what that's called, seller? That's fraud. That's the F word, right? And judges don't like it when you go around defrauding your clients. No, judges can award punitive damages to punish you for fraud. So, of course, this case settled. The agents and the brokers had to dig deep into their pockets and pull out money and give that money to the plaintiff, Elaine Delwin, who's, last time I checked, still the owner of 32 Marina Boulevard in San Rafael. It's all public record. So, I know that y'all don't really know what the differences in natural hazard disclosure reports are, because the reality is they come and they tell you, oh, we're all the same and we use the same information, but that's not true. So I will send to Michael these comparisons and let him, and you guys can let him know if you want them or not. So what I did, because talk is cheap, guys, talk is cheap. I could get up here and tell you all kinds of things all day long. The only thing that matters is what's in writing. Because if you put something in writing and it's not true, you could be sued for it. So I have put these comparisons in writing, and what this represents is one address and two reports side by side together. You see this yellow zone here? Every line in the yellow zone is a lawsuit for desirability. This is an ambulance chasing lawyer's happy dream come true. The only thing that matters is what's in writing. You know, I've never even received so much as a nasty phone call from these companies because truth is an absolute defense. So one of the most important things to do when you get a natural hazard disclosure report is read the end. I don't like surprises. And my poor husband keeps finding that out the hard way. So when I read a book, I always read the end because first, before I start from the beginning, because I need to know who's going to die. I want to know who's going to be dead, right? I mean, right now I'm reading Anna Karenina, and she dies. I read the end, right? And then I started from the beginning. She throws herself in front of a train. Oh, don't get mad at me. She died like 200 years ago. You should have known. I mean, come on. The jig is up. You should have known. Anyway, so to make a short story long, tedious, and boring, the last pages of reports is where natural hazard disclosure companies show you who they are. The big print gives and the little print takes away, right? My mom used to tell me, when people show you who they are, believe them. So this company that I'm holding here, their terms and conditions is 5 pages. They take 5 pages of terms and conditions to protect themselves from you. They do. This company says in their terms and conditions, there may be other disclosures required by California law, but this company makes no representations as to the adequacy or accuracy in compliance with any laws. So escrow officers are closing escrow every day with dirty language like that says they don't follow the law and it's going to be wrong. And it becomes part of the master file when you close escrow and you all agree to it. Okay. This company says that they will not do that which you have hired them to do. Here, look. Quote, a search for a specific letter of map amendment or letter of map revision is outside the scope of this report. And if you want that information, you need to contact FEMA. Have you ever tried contacting FEMA? Yeah, that's the other 4-letter F word. I've tried contacting FEMA and they don't call me back. But Property ID employs a certified FEMA floodplain manager. Her name is Sybil. And when Sybil calls FEMA, they take her calls trembling because she points out errors in their data. So yeah, they take Sybil's call. I want to share with you Property ID's terms and conditions. Everybody's got them. Here it is. It's 1 page. It specifically lists buyer, buyer's agent, buyer's broker, seller, seller's agent, seller's broker, escrow officer, and escrow company as recipients of this report, which is covered under $20 million of E&O insurance, which names your brokerage as an additional insured. And you can get a copy of Property ID's terms and certificates of insurance from your broker so that you can see that, yes, you are named as an additional insured. The last lawsuit of the day that I will share with you is very important, and it's called Field versus Century 21 Cloden Fornes. This case is important because all of this information that I shared with you, don't talk about it. It's just for your knowledge, for the background. I'm getting there. So this lady and this man, Mr. and Mrs. Field, wanted to go and look at a property they wanted to buy. So they asked their agent, hey, here we are. What are the boundaries of this property? And so their agent very innocently said, the northern boundary is the street over there. The eastern boundary is this creek over here. The southern boundary is that over there, and the western boundary is this over here. So Mr. and Mrs. Field bought the property, and then they learned, oh no, the boundaries of this property are substantially less than what the agent had described. 4 years later, that's like a SpongeBob time card, right? 4 boring years later, the buyer, sorry, the buyers, I have sons and they love SpongeBob. Sorry. So the buyers brought their lawsuit, okay, and so the attorneys for the brokerage were stamping their feet and gnashing their teeth and hollering, "Time out! No, no, judge. The statute of limitations is 2 years. These people waited 4 years. This lawsuit must be dismissed." And you know what the judge ruled? When an agent makes a statement, not knowing if it's true, the statement is false, that's fraud. The 2-year statute of limitations does not apply in fraud cases. I'm sharing this with you because do not say these words. Oh my goodness. And I have heard these words coming out of the mouths of realtors. A buyer, don't worry about the Sherburne Hills thrust fault that's so close to this property on Velvet Leaf Circle in San Ramon. Don't worry about that. All of California is in an earthquake fault zone. That's a false statement. Don't say things like that. Here is what I would do. I would email this to my buyer. What does the E in email stand for? I know all you millennials are hollering electronic. Okay, yeah, no. When it comes to real estate, your email is your evidence, okay? Evidence. And when you write an email, you should write it for the recipient's lawyer to read. And I will send Michael these words for you so that you can have them and you can get them from him. Or you can email me anytime. I'm maylana@propertyid.com. So I would write these words. Hello, my wonderful buyer. Attached is the property ID natural hazard disclosure. Please read it very carefully. If you have any questions about anything in this report, please call Property ID. And this is critical that you type the phone number, 1-800-626-0106. They prepared this report for you. They are the most qualified to explain it. Review this report, and then I will send it to you in DocuSign or DigiSign or however it is you sign. That will take you 3 minutes of your whole life. But if the poop hits the fan, your email is evidence of your intent to provide complete disclosure, to remind your buyer, hey, this is really important. You need to read it. And number 3, to direct your buyer to the person most qualified to explain it, not you. I've been explaining property ID reports for 22 years to buyers. I can do a way better job explaining the Alquist-Priolo Earthquake Fault Zone Act of 1972, unless, of course, you've read it. The last thing I will share with you is this. 22 years of explaining reports to buyers, I have figured out who the plaintiffs are, the ones who like to sue. They are not the ones who want to spend 20 minutes on the phone with me explaining every single disclosure in here. They don't sue. They don't sue. They understand what's going on. Usually the ones who sue are your friends and family. They're the ones who got the disclosure disclosures on a link, and they went like this. Oh, okay. Click. Okay. Oh, agree. Finish. Give me the keys. They haven't read a word. Nothing. These are the people 4 months later, 6 months later, they're calling me and they're saying, my neighbor showed me her property ID report, but you didn't send it to me and you need to send it to me right now. And I'm like, well, hold on. What's the address? And I check the database and say, you know, I'm really sorry, but a property ID report was never ordered for this address. So that's it, guys. Again, my email is Mailana, Mailana @propertyid.com. I welcome you. I encourage you. I invite you. Call me, email me anytime. Please don't call me on your divorces. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, let's, we haven't been peppered with questions. If somebody has a burning one, now would be the time. This will be your chance. Mine would always be, I want to know the names of the other NHD reports. But I can guess because they're connected to the title companies and we know which ones those are.
Well, they're not property ID, Michael.
Yeah, I know
that. That is the, you know what? But I'll tell you honestly, property ID gets invited to all the litigation parties. We've been invited to litigation parties where we never even did the report. But you know, we have had problems in the past. Oh my gosh, I had a buyer who received a property ID report and the Mello-Roos was wrong. The agent called me and said, oh, you know, my buyer got a property ID report and it's different from what the tax page is saying. And so I check and, oh, wow, property ID disclosed the Mello-Roos was $4, but in fact, the Mello-Roos was $400. So every year, this guy for like 13 years, he emails me the buyer, he emails me the property tax bill, and property ID sends him a check for $396 because, right, you know, we told him about the $4, so you know he gets $396. So yes, you know, we've had issues. Everybody has issues, you know. Welcome to California, but we take care of it. So that's the difference.
So we do have a couple of questions. One, the person is already logged off, but can people sue if it's an as-is sale? And of course, I could answer that, but you're the lawyer.
Absolutely. As is still has legally required disclosures as every other sale. The only difference between as is and a not as is this. As is means I'm not fixing it and I'm not going to pay to fix it, but you still have to disclose it. Right, Michael?
That's right. So does property ID offer insurance coverage for lawsuits that claim missing information? In other words, does your E&O cover missing information?
From the property ID report, yes.
Yeah.
So if you know if the seller doesn't disclose that there was a multiple murders on the property, we don't cover you for that because that wasn't in our disclosure. Right? It's only our report. If we did not disclose something that was legally required to be disclosed in a natural hazard disclosure report, of course we're going to, absolutely.
Yeah. There's a question asking about the other stuff, you know, the non-natural hazard sections. Is that in the sample report you provided? You know, the taxes, the mold disclosure advisory, all that stuff.
Absolutely.
And somebody wants to know what is specifically in your report that's not in others. I'll share with you the people that have registered, and if you send it to me, I've seen that breakdown, right? And if you email it to me, I'll make sure everybody gets it. And it shows the difference between the various companies. And then somebody's asking about if you have fancy colored maps like JCP.
No, but we will send you a fancy colored map. Now, let me tell you something about the JCP fancy maps. Read it carefully, because it says right underneath those fancy color maps, don't rely on this map, because they don't. It says this map is provided for convenience only. You don't rely on this map. Now, if you want me to prepare a map for you, you better put your seatbelt on, because it's going to look like this, okay? So let's say, and so this actually is a map that Property ID created for an agent who asked the same thing. He said, I've always used JCP, but you know what, Maylana, I like you, so, you know, I'm going to give Property ID a shot. I said, okay. So he's here in the East Bay, and he had taken a listing in Clayton, and he read through the Property ID report, and he said, you know, Maylana, it says here that there's all these faults, but I want to see a map. And his name, what was his name? His name was Joe. His name was Joe. And I said, okay, Joe, but let me tell you something. I'm not going to give you a cute little map that you're not supposed to rely on. I'm going to give you a map that's true. But here is the problem, Joe. If I send you a map that's real, we're getting real, you need to send it to every buyer who might want to buy this property. He's like, okay. So I sent him a map like this that showed the truth, the property, and look at, he only wanted to know about faults, right? And he wanted to know about landslides too. So I sent him a landslide map and separately a fault map, because the truth, both of these maps would be illegible if you put all the hazards that actually affect this property. So I sent him 2 attachments. He's like, I want to know about the landslide and I want to know about the faults. I don't care about anything else. So I sent him the property with the landslide zone and the property with the faults. He said, I don't want to, how do I unsee what you just sent me? I said, Joe, you asked for the truth, and you're going to get the truth out of me. And now you have to disclose these maps to anybody who might want to buy this property. So my recommendation to you is this. These maps are not legally required. And those companies that put a cute little map in there, it's wrong. They tell you don't rely on this map, and it's not 100% truthful. The best thing to do is get the report as the law intended and send it, and let the buyer say, I want to know, where is the Sherburne Hills thrust fault? And then I will prepare an email that says attached is the property and the faults that affect this property. And if you have a question about this map, don't ask the agent, ask me. We prepared this map. We prepared the report, and this is for free. It's not, we don't charge you extra for this, but just know that if you get a map from me, it's going to be the truth, because that's what you have to do. If you don't give a map, you are in complete compliance with the law. If you do give a map, it better be a truthful map and not this little rinky dink that says, don't rely on this map. I mean, I'm sorry, I have to be honest about it, you know?
No,
I am
ma'am.
being honest about it for you.
So Joe couldn't handle the truth, is what you're.
Joe couldn't handle the truth.
One final question.
But
So
by the
they're
way,
not.
and Joe only uses property ID now, and he never asks for maps anymore unless his clients ask for them, which is very, I mean, excuse me, unless the buyers ask for the map.
Right. So anyhow, no map of the concentric circles. So there's a good question. If I'm a buyer's agent and I'm writing up an offer and paragraph 7 talks about who's paying for what, and there's a choice about environment, you know, the NHD, click environmental, and then prepared by. So let's say the listing agent has already given us one of those NHD reports, you know, the 49.99 in 15-minute, you know, reports. Would it be your suggestion, this is just a wild question, that the agent specify that they ask for a different report?
Michael, that is a fantastic question. And I guess, you know, well, first and foremost, when you represent the buyer, you have a fiduciary duty to this buyer. And almost always, buyer's agent gets invited to the litigation party. Almost always, okay? Because the lawyer that's representing the buyer says, don't worry, I know you like your agent, don't worry, your agent has insurance, right? That's what these ambulance chasing jerk lawyers say. Don't worry, your agent has insurance. So first and foremost, you have a fiduciary duty to your buyer. So when the seller has provided this cheapo depot report, Michael, I will send you the language that I would email to my buyer. Hello, buyer. Attached is a comparison between the report the seller and the listing agent gave you and the one I'm gonna order for you. As you can see, the differences in reports are huge, buyer. You, buyer, can pay for this report out of escrow. Don't worry, buyer. It's $99. If you don't buy this house, I will cancel the property ID report. You don't have to pay for that. That email is evidence of your intent. First of all, it's showing your buyer, my agent cares about me. The listing agent only cares about the seller, because obviously I can see there's a huge difference. My agent is making sure I get everything, right? And also, in the event that, you know, this buyer gets angry and sues, that email, your email, is evidence of your fiduciary duty, that this is what you would want to receive if you were the one buying this house. So if your buyer replies, no, thank you, you keep that email forever.
Let me ask you, so how long would, let's say I'm showing property this Saturday in a very expensive house. And let's say the disclosures are a insufficient NHD report. I could order one right now.
Yes,
How long
yes.
would it take me to get one from Property ID?
You can order it, and you'll get it in an hour-ish. I wish I would have had our vice president of client relations, Sammy Brazil. She's the one who does this, and I think within an hour or two.
And so let's say that there's multiple, there's multiple offers. Asking the seller to do a different NHD report is not necessarily the easiest thing to do, but so let's say I do that and I say it's going to be billed to escrow, but we never actually get into escrow because it falls apart. It's $99 at the gate, right?
Well, no. First of all, in this market, I would not push the seller and say, you better get this for me or else. The seller's
Right.
gonna go, I got 10 other offers, go away.
Right.
So what I would do as the agent representing the buyer is do it quietly with my buyer. Order the property ID report. And again, that email that I'm gonna send you says, buyer, I'm gonna order this report for you. You can pay for it out of escrow, but don't worry, buyer. If you do not close escrow on this house, I will cancel the property ID report so you don't have to pay for it.
So does the agent have to pay for it up front?
No.
All right.
No.
So and there's a question about related to this. So if I do that and I get your property ID report, which you know I always order on my listings anyhow, when I get one, I would have an obligation to have the seller. I'd have to give a copy of it to the seller and get them to sign it as well as the one that they provided.
Well, the seller might disagree and say, I already provided this other disclosure, and, you know, under the law, I get to choose, right? They might, the agent might go toe to toe with you. And depending on the market, it's not worth it, you know, to do that. What I would do is the most important signature is the buyer's. Get the buyer to sign it. Once the buyer signs it, that's it. That's great. I would, add a courtesy, once the buyer signs it, send it to the listing agent and say, we ordered a property ID report. Here is, the buyer has signed it. Would you please ask your seller to sign it? We went ahead and ordered it. Buyer's going to pay for it out of escrow. But my buyer wants, and I wouldn't do this until you're in escrow, right?
Oh, of course, yeah, right. We don't include that with the initial offer, right?
Right.
Well, that's great. And so send me that, that stuff that you talked about. I'll distribute to everybody. I'm going to send you a list of everybody that registered, and feel free to send them stuff yourself.
Thank you. You know, it's the only reason why I'm going to email you is so that you always have a direct connection to me, so that in the future, if you've got something and you're like, wait a minute, she said something about the fire, or I can't remember what, let me just shoot her an email. I will be in your inbox so you can find me, and you'll always have, you can email me at 11 o'clock at night, and don't be surprised if I answer. Sometimes I can't sleep. I got hot flashes, I'm up.
So the one final thing, if the property never goes through escrow, doesn't close, then
Let us know. Let
we let them know it's canceled.
Let-
Nobody pays.
Cancel it. No one pays for it. Absolutely.
Why not do it? What could you
Lose nothing.
lose? Nothing. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure. Good to hear you. Again, we'll do it again sometime. If you have other topics, let us know. We kept most everybody to the end. We had over 33, I think, at one point. We're down to 25. So good job. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you guys next week. We'll be talking about something else. Any questions, you can reach out directly to Mylana, or send it to me and I'll forward it to her, and we'll see you guys later. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Michael.
Bye. Thank you.